Cool. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Lisa. If you've got any questions throughout the talk, there's a Q&A feature in the in Zoom, which you can use, which might be useful, or just put it into the chat, and I'll answer it when I get to before I move on to the next kind of section or the next bits. Pardon me. So I'll start off. You can see my screen there. Hello, my name's Anthony, and I'm a huge nerd. That has been kind of a constant theme throughout my life. It wasn't a deliberate choice, but it ends up with wearing funny glasses like this in the picture there. They're Epson something or other glasses that projects a computer screen into your eyes, and it makes like a little screen be huge. And they were garbage, but they look ridiculous, and it's a great picture for a nerd talk. So kind of the story starts when I finished high school in 2002. I went to RMIT TAFE in 2003. My grades were not good enough to go straight into university. I wasn't a very good student. I was very distracted at school, I guess. Too busy playing video games, too busy messing around at the back of the class to pay attention to what the teacher is saying. But I did an advanced diploma in computer engineering and computer systems, which was extremely boring. So I changed to Swinburne University the year later and did a TAFE course in network engineering, which was a lot more interesting. I finished that fine and went on to university. And during this time, I was working at an Apple reseller in Malvern, Computers Now. Some of you may have been there before. It's long gone now, but at the time, that was my first introduction to Apple products and Apple things. And that was, as you'll find out later on in this talk, that was a big part of my working life, was Apple products. And that rise of Apple, really, I grew with how Apple grew. But I never finished my degree at university. I did a degree in information technology, a bachelor's, and I dropped out. And when I dropped out, I actually ended up working at RMIT, looking after their Apple servers. So I wasn't good enough to finish a degree, but I was good enough to work at the university, helping others finish their courses. And I worked at a mix of Melbourne Uni and RMIT for about 3 years. I'm doing like Mac sysadmin support, running a system called Lectopia, which was a podcast recording system. So we would have a computer in every lecture theatre. Which was about 150 theatres at RMIT at its peak, and we would record every lecture, the presenter, the screen, merge it all together into various video formats, and make it a podcast for students. And this was in 2006, 2007. So it's kind of very early into the podcasting game, and that was what paid my bills, gave me way too much money for the for the age that I was, but it was a fun job, which gave me a lot of time to also work on a site called Mac Talk, which is where things get a bit more interesting. I started Mac Talk when I was at TAFE, just a hobby thing, with a bunch of people from a forum called Overclockers Australia, which is still around. It's a big PC forum, because back then in 2003, 2004, 2005, there was no social media. It just wasn't a thing. There wasn't Twitter. There wasn't Facebook. There wasn't. If you wanted to find people to talk to about a topic that you liked, an internet forum was the way you did it. And Overclockers Australia was the kind of biggest Australian PC forum, but they had a small section for Macs about Apple stuff. And we got a bit tired of having just being a little small section on the site. So me and a guy called Matthew Kelch started a site called Mac Talk. And as Apple grew, the site grew. You can see here some of the pictures of the site. It was just a forum, which at its peak had 50,000 members and over 1 million page views a month, which was quite interesting, because back when Apple was very much a small niche in the kind of computer industry, but as Apple grew with the Macs were very popular, they moved to Intel CPUs. the iPod was a massive hit, and then when the iPhone came out, it was crazy. So that was a great experience. We had lots of fun doing it. One of the things we did whilst running it was make a magazine, like an old school physical copy of a magazine, which was fun because I never made a magazine before. It wasn't a thing that I had any experience in. I wasn't a writer. I was trained in computer stuff. But I love reading computer magazines, but nobody made the computer magazine that I wanted to read. So I thought, why not do it myself? And I managed to do it. We made 10,000 copies. We gave them out at a bunch of Apple resellers, and it was free for people to read. And we made money off the ads. But unfortunately, never got past that first issue because for issue 2, we got a company wanted to help us make it, and we just didn't get along. What I wanted and what the company wanted didn't mix, and the magazine just kind of stalled. And by that time, I was not very interested in making any more issues. It kind of turned me off the idea of making a second issue. Another interesting story from the Mac Talk times was when the Apple Store in Sydney opened up in 2008. Now it seems weird, but at the time it was a big deal. Australia finally had an Apple Store, somewhere where we could buy Apple products the way Apple intended us to. And I thought it would be a good way to promote the site and meet some of the people who have been on the site for quite a long time by going to the Apple Store and waiting for it to open. So you can see a picture of me getting interviewed by someone, and this is a photo that I took looking down from the top level of the Apple Store when they were giving out little prizes. So there were those white boxes are T-shirts, for like a commemorative T-shirt for the Apple Store opening. And I have a video here that I took of maybe like 10 minutes after the store opened, of other people coming in to the store, and it's a bit crazy. Yeah, so that was, for some reason, a big deal. Now it seems ridiculous in hindsight. Like, just a store, who cares? But yeah, it was very big deal at the time. The whole street was closed down on George Street in Sydney, if you know where that store is. So that was kind of fun. And then 2 years later, Apple said, "Oh, the iPad's going to come out, but Australia, you're not going to get it for another few months." And as Apple fans, that wasn't acceptable. We didn't want to wait for that. So me and a friend, Peter Wells, thought it would be a good idea to go to New York. I think Peter was mostly his idea. He wanted to go to New York for a trip. And at that time, I'd never been overseas before. So I thought, what the hell? I'll be able to fund this trip by buying enough iPads for the people on Mac Talk who wanted them. To be about 20 to 30 people who were willing to prepay me to buy them and iPad, and with enough margin for me to cover the cost of me and Peter going there. And if you thought the one in Sydney was crazy, this one gets even weirder, because it was not just Australians, like a small Australian store. This was the launch of the iPad in Apple's flagship store in New York, the Fifth Avenue store. And this video, I didn't take this video, but it's because I lost all my footage from that time. Unfortunately, a hard drive crashed and I lost it. But you'll be able to see kind of how, looking back now, it's very weird for a new iPad, but it's interesting to see in hindsight.
You got reservation? Right down the sidewalk. I don't know how long. You can get online. You got enough. Give us a pause. I don't know how good this is. Yeah. Come on, mix it up, man. I think the iPad's good.
can see there's whistle happening. There's all the cheering. I'm somewhere in that crowd. You can see it here. So that was the first guy.
I'm very curious if this is like really the future. I'm thrilled to check it out now. We'll see.
Show it this way, yeah. Look at me right here.
Yeah, so you can see it was a pretty weird time. That's me. The only photo I have of me there is that guy in the hat. That is me with the arrow pointing there. So me and Peter got about 20 to 30 iPads for different people, and we were able to bring them back to Australia in a second suitcase. And when we got through to customs, I declared that I had, so many different iPads, and I was prepared to pay the import tax on them because you had to pay a GST because it was obviously not a personal device I'm bringing in. I'm bringing in a whole bunch of them, but the customs agents were so interested in seeing what the iPad was, because that's how big of a deal it was at the time, that they asked me to show them the iPad. So I showed mine from my backpack, gave them like a 20-minute demonstration of the iPad, and they forgot to charge me the GST, which would have been a few $1,000s. So when I got back, I didn't have to pay any tax on it, which was very nice. And people were so keen for the iPads. I had people from South Australia, from Sydney, meet me in Melbourne Airport before I even got home to get their iPads, because they obviously knew what flight I was coming back on. They're like, "Oh, can I just meet you at the airport so that I can go from Sydney to Melbourne, get my iPad, and then go back home without having to wait for it to be posted." That's kind of how keen people were for this product at that time. And running Mad Talk was great because we were all involved in that. It was a very exciting time in a technology space. We also had a podcast, which was kind of popular back in 2010, 2011. When it peaked, we had about 3,000 listeners every week, which was a lot back then because there weren't many other podcasts. And we made lots of friends. I'm still friends with those people today. We had meetups quite on a regular basis, where we had lots of fans. Like I had one story where I'd be talking to my mum on the train on the phone, and I had a person once, kind of hear me talking, and then when I was off the phone, asked me, "Oh, is your name Anthony?" It's like, "Yes." Like, "Oh, I think I've heard you on a podcast before." I'm like, "You may have, on the Matt Talk podcast." And yeah, this stranger knew me from my voice, just from a podcast that he would listen to. And we still today, I still get people asking me, "When are you going to do another podcast? When are you going to come back?" So it's a lot of people liked that podcast. It was great to make those kind of friends and that connection then. And I managed to make that into my full-time job for about 2 or 3 years, because the site made enough money that I would be able to, from ads and affiliate links, I'd be able to make a living off it. And this is a video of my office at the time. You can just see it was a little one-room office just off the side of an electrician's office. So they had a warehouse underneath in South Melbourne, and we would record the podcast there. It was a good size because we could keep the room not too big, so there wouldn't be too many reverberations. And it was close in the city, so everyone could go from all over Melbourne to do the podcast together. And that was pretty much it. It was our cave, is what we called it, because it was very small and dingy. But then I decided to sell the site in 2011. It got sold in 2012 to Niche Media. I did not know how to sell a website because I've never had to do that kind of thing in the past. Mostly because I was just bored running it, and I was at a conference called Webstock in Wellington, and my friend Peter was there with me, and he saw me just angrily bashing out an email to someone for being a jerk. It was either a person on the forums being stupid, or some advertiser who was screwing me around. And I think he noticed me getting angrier over the months, I guess, and said, look, why are you still doing this? Have you ever thought about doing something else? And it happened to be a coincidence that on the same day there was a talk at that conference from a guy called Melvin Mann, who kind of explained how it's not worth putting up with these things that you don't like if you've got a good support network behind you. Like, his idea was, what's the worst that could happen if you didn't do the thing that you're doing? The people who love you are still going to love you. You're not going to go homeless. You're not going to end up with, your friends will still be there for you. And it kind of made me realize I don't have to keep doing this just because it's what is expected of me if I'm not having fun anymore. And at that point, I wasn't having any fun. So I managed to sell the website to Niche Media, who ran at the time the Macworld magazine. Yeah, they did nothing with it for many years. I don't know why they did nothing with it, but they paid me, so that was my main concern. So before I move on to this next section about what I did after my talk, there's a question here from Richard Pilgrim, and he asked, do I think that if Apple has lost its cult-like status it used to have? I think definitely has. It's hard to root for the underdog because they're not the underdog anymore. Back then, when Apple was at that kind of hype, Microsoft was still king. Everyone used Windows. Mac fans were used to being made fun of for so long. It was that kind of time to enjoy having something that what we believed in for so long being good now. And whereas now Apple's the richest company in the world, literally trillion-dollar business. They don't need us to help them anymore. It's actually sad if you were to go too deep into that territory, because it's like, well, Apple doesn't need our help now. Apple is just another big company making products. And honestly, maybe the past few years, their products haven't been that excited to get about anyway. So it's not worth the emotional investment into what is essentially a trillion-dollar company. So when I sold Mac Talk, this would have been about 2012. I went overseas for a few months and went to the USA for a while. Just enjoyed traveling a bit. When I came back, it was like, all right, well, what am I going to do now? What do I do? And at the time, Apple had just released the App Store, which again, hard to think of now, but there was a time when iPhones didn't have apps, and that was a new idea. And a lot of Mac developers who were making great software on the Mac platform wanted to make iPhone apps because they saw there was a whole new audience of people. There were way more iPhones around than there were Macs, but their skills transferred easily over to making mobile software. So we thought, why don't we make a conference to help them do that best? Because we love Apple, the Mac app scene. That's the big reason why we preferred Macs, and we want that same quality of software to come across to the phones and to the iPad. So me and my friend Lauren, we made this conference. We did it for 3 years, and at its peak, we had about 350 people attend. We ran it in Melbourne. We had guests from all over the world. One of our guests was a guy called Lauren Brichter, who has the patents for when you slide down on your iPhone or on an iPhone and it kind of bounces back, and to refresh a page. He invented that back when the iPhone came out. He was on the original iPhone team. So it was great to hear him talk about what he thinks makes the iPhone great. And we had lots of local developers who at the time were like one or two people, two friends making an app that suddenly had a job that they loved out of making mobile software. And we wanted more and more people to do that, because we saw it was a great opportunity for people to get out of their crappy jobs, make the software that they don't like, to make software that they do like, and go straight from their minds, their brains, their computers to the customer with no middleman. Unfortunately, the conference didn't do very well. I actually ended up losing about $60,000 all up across those 3 years. And it was lots of fun, but yeah, didn't make any money out of it. So I stopped doing that and decided, all right, it's time to make some proper money here. And I chose the very lucrative world of tech journalism, which actually doesn't make much money, but it was what I I thought I could do well, and I enjoyed doing it, and it was better than losing money on a conference. The site that I made was with my friend called Peter and a friend called James Croft, called Reckoner. And one of the things we wanted to do on Reckoner was write about things that we wanted to write about. And so they gave me permission to kind of write whatever I wanted to write. And one of those things was trying to assess, are the 4G networks, which at the time were new, which one is the best one? Vodafone, Telstra, and Optus all had 4G, brand new 4G networks. And it's like, well, why does Telstra's one cost like twice as much? Is it actually twice as better as Vodafone and Optus? And so I made this little Raspberry Pi contraption thing here with some GPS devices, some 4G modems, some batteries, and Raspberry Pis. And I put this in a backpack and walk around Melbourne, and it would measure the signal strength of each network and do a speed test on each network. And we could come up with which network was better or worse. And then another article that was very popular on Reckoner was my cryptocurrency mining farm. So this fire hazard that you can see here is, I think that was about 40 GPUs, all doing useless number crunching to earn money. And I thought, oh, this would be a great way to pay off my one more thing debt. Just plug in some computers, I can do that and let them run, and they would earn me money. It was very, in hindsight, that was actually true, but at the time, after a few months of this, the owner of that shed told me, can you please get them out, they're noisy, they make too much heat, just get rid of them. And I thought, okay, look, this is not going to go anywhere. The price is never going to be that much, it's not going to grow that much. So I sold the equipment and the roughly 13 Bitcoin that I got from it for a small profit, maybe like $1,000 profit, which I was pretty happy with because I didn't end up losing any money. But I worked out that I would, if I kept that 13 Bitcoin, and I have the year here, if I kept it until 2017, instead of selling it back in 2014-ish, 2015-ish, I would have had over $400,000 instead of $1,000 profit. So that would have been quite nice. Jed, I mined the Bitcoin in 2014-ish. Yeah, so 2013, 2014. So about that kind of time period was when I did that. Yeah, and if I kept it for 3 years, just did nothing with it, just kept that cryptocurrency in a wallet, I would have made a lot of money. But how was I to know that those magical beans will be worth something one day? But yeah, Reckoner ended up writing some articles for it that ended up getting us an award. So we actually won an award for Best Independent Media from the Optus IT Journalism Awards. And that was kind of a proud moment that I managed to become a legitimate tech journalist by winning an award for it, which was quite nice. So the other interesting story that happened around that same time was NAB gave me this offer in the mail, and it says you can get 100 frequent flyer points for every transaction you make on a credit card. And I thought that was a bit too good to be true. One transaction, 100 points. Does 1 cent equal a transaction? So I called NAB and said, look, I got this offer in the mail. There's no terms and conditions on the back. It just says, if I make a transaction, I get 100 points. Is there any limits? Is there any conditions? Just like, or just on the phone, like, no, there isn't. I said, great, thank you. And I managed to figure out that I could pay my Citilink bill and my Telstra bill in 1 cent portions using a little script in Firefox. So it would pretend to be my mouse cursor and just pay 1 cent at a time. And I did that a few hundred times to Citilink, and Citilink was like, they called me, they noticed and said, look, sorry, there's been some kind of attack on your account. Our credit card system's gone crazy, making 1 cent charges to your account. We're super sorry, we'll take care of it. And I had to explain to them, no, I did that on purpose. I actually want those 1 cent transactions because I got an offer from my bank for 100 points per transaction. And the guy was very confused And he said, so what do you want us to do? And I said, if you can do nothing, that would be great. And they did nothing for about half an hour, and then half an hour later, my card was blocked from their system. Telstra said something happened about an hour later, but the Liberal Party did not notice any of this. The Liberal Party has a donation thing on their website where you can donate money to the party. And most forms for online payments have a limit of like, all right, you can't pay any less than 50 cents because the merchant would have to pay credit card fees on that. And the credit card fee is about 30 cents plus a percentage. So if I'm giving them 1 cent and they're paying 30 cents for each transaction that I make, obviously they're going to lose money. But many forms, including the Liberal Party, a lot of weirdo churches, a lot of homophobic groups, things like that, accept donations, but didn't check their forms. So I made all up 10,448 transactions to sites like these, and NAB noticed. And NAB's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, you gave me an offer. There was no terms and conditions. So they said, look, we're not going to give you any more points. You're obviously taking advantage of it, which is fair enough. And I had to sign this deed here, and they promised to give me the points eventually, and they did. So I ended up getting about 1 million points, Qantas points, from NAB as part of that promotion, and that got me going overseas in business class twice. So I managed to go to a list here: Dubai, Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris, London, Boston, Chicago, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Germany again, Switzerland, London, Dallas, and Los Angeles. On NAB's and Qantas's points. So that was very nice. So I managed to do that in 2000 and when was it? 2000, I think 12 and 14. No, so 14 and 18 was when I did that. I'm just going to have a drink here. So when I came back from my overseas trips, I thought, well, what do I do now? Reckoning was going okay, but it wasn't making much money. It wasn't enough to really live off. I was still doing part-time IT work to pay the bills. I still liked IT journalism. I still wanted to write for a living. So I started a site or an email newsletter called The Sizzle. And The Sizzle was pretty much a daily email newsletter that goes out around between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. whenever I feel like it, with the day's tech news summarized by me, to mostly with the idea of people are busy now. They haven't got IT people who would normally be on top of all these news and these things happening in their section of the industry. Now don't have time because they're busy working. They've got jobs to take care of. So I was hoping to take that news, put it in a email that they can read on their way home from work and still stay up to date without having to trudge through all these RSS feeds and stuff like that. And I've been doing that now for about 5 years. People pay me $5 a month to read it. And I've currently got 640 something subscribers. And I also do tech hardware reviews. So I'm also like a freelance tech writer, but that's all dried up now thanks to coronavirus. But I would get to review products like these, which is a lot of fun. I get new toys and gadgets sent to me to write about and give my thoughts on, and I get paid to do that, which is a great job. Last year, I bought an electric car, which was a lot of fun. I've wanted for a long time. It was finally one that I could afford, and I enjoyed driving it. And I thought, why aren't there enough charging stations around Australia? I thought, well, why can't I be the person that makes these charging stations happen? So I made a company called EV Up with the intention of installing these chargers on business premises, and people pay to use the chargers. In Europe or USA, this has been done many times before, but in Australia, we're still a few years in the past. Unfortunately, that did not go well at all. Lied to by investors. People have let me down. That was not good. So that's not happening anymore. I'll just to kind of give that contrast of if it sounds like things I've done in the past has been a success, they definitely haven't. I've tried things that haven't gone well. Like the One More Thing conference did not go well, even though it was fun. And this new business, EV Up, did not go well, and was actually a traumatic event. It took me quite a few months to get over what happened there. I can't even say what happened because there's still lawyers involved in this. So just know that that did not go well. So that's where I'm up to now. Pretty much just I bought a Tesla a few weeks ago, but I can't drive it anywhere because of coronavirus. So that's me in the garage looking sad that the car's just sitting there gathering dust, unfortunately. So I'm looking for something to do next, perhaps. But for now, this is always still happening. If you visit thisisall.com.au/nerd, you'll get a 10% discount on a yearly subscription. And yeah, I'm the Decryption on Twitter if you ever want to chat. And I like the Kangaroos football team, which is also not happening because of coronavirus. So I can't watch footy, I can't drive my car. But yes, that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks very much, Anthony. So you can also raise your hand in this using one of the tools there, and I'll just open the side panel. So what you could do is raise your hand, and we can allow you to talk, and you can actually unmute yourself and say hello and ask a question. Or don't forget, there's the Q&A button in there. So I mean, I can't actually add questions in the Q&A, so I'll ask you one. So I told you the story that Lisa and I, on the way back from the city in February, got a Tesla S as an Uber, which was pretty amazing. I'll switch my camera back on. So I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people out there are really interested in the whole electric vehicle kind of thing. So I just was wondering what are some of your general thoughts about where that is.
Yeah, I mean, Australia, the way I see it, Australia is so far behind the rest of the world in this. Like, I've been to Europe, I've been to the USA, I've been to New Zealand,
Norway?
even.
All right.
In Norway. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
in Norway, they're nuts for it. But it seems so inevitable here in Australia, and Australia could benefit so much from it. Yet we haven't done anything about it, and there's no infrastructure. There's very little places to charge. The prices of the cars here cost a fortune, but they're such great cars to drive. Even a cheap electric car is so much more smooth and refined and just easier to drive than a petrol car. They're way more reliable. It's just that for some reason we're just years behind. Whereas in New Zealand, they've got way more. They've got more electric cars than Australia does. Yet the population's like a quarter, and they've got like 200 chargers around the country, whereas we've got maybe about 90. So just that difference in the things, it's just a disappointing thing to see when Australia could gain so much from it, because most of us live in Melbourne or Sydney, so it's not a difficult thing to do. But it's not happening. But they're great cars to drive. Not just a Tesla, but even like the Hyundai Ioniq that I had was just so much more, just smoother and quieter and faster, because there's no lag in the engine to get started, and there's no weird smells. There's no harsh vibrations. I just really prefer driving an electric car.
Mm-hmm. And more expensive, says Michelle.
Yeah, they're not cheap to buy here. Elsewhere in the world, the government gives you big discounts to buy them. There's incentives like 10,000. Like in the UK, you get a £5,000 upfront grant to buy the car. So that's about 10,000 Australian dollars. And you also get a grant to install a charger at your house, so the charge is free for home use. And you can also get like certain tax discounts. So kind of like what we have with our fringe benefits tax. That's increased for EV drivers in the UK. Yeah, and in America even, you get a $7,500 tax offset for buying an electric car. In California, they'll add on like a few $1,000s as well. Like in Canada, you'll get like $10,000 to buy a car, an electric car. So it's just, Australia's just all the other OECD countries have given some kind of incentives because they realise air pollution, the quality of life in our cities is so poor. We need to make movement on electric cars, but in Australia we just haven't.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think the oil prices and all that
Yeah,
play into it now?
Well, it depends. If you think oil prices are going to stay this low for the next 3, 5, 10 years, then yeah, a hybrid would be better. But it's just a temporary blip. Like in the next few months, petrol will probably go back up to $1.10, $1.20, and then the electric car is cheaper to run at least. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know we've got Chris in Germany, and Richard said he's in Dublin, in fact. So they probably have a view on what might be happening over there. But I know I went to Norway a few years ago to visit a friend, and there were so many electric vehicles going around over there. It was,
yeah, in Norway, they've done some severe incentives, like 50% of the price is tax deductible. So if you buy a car worth $40,000, 20 grand can be taken off your tax. So pretty much you would pay no tax for that year if you buy an electric car. Things like you can't park in certain parts of the city unless you have an electric car. Lanes on highways you can't use unless you have an electric car. Zones of the city you just can't drive into unless you have an electric car. All these little incentives on top of the monetary ones, people have just gone crazy for them in Norway.
Yeah. And what about autonomous? Where do you see that one going?
That's tough because we don't know what's really happening or not, because it's very. You see what Google does with Waymo, and GM with Cruise, and Tesla with their autopilot stuff. There's such different approaches to the same thing, and none of them seem to work well in reality. So you see what the Waymo cars do around other people, and they're just so bad at driving other people who are driving their cars, kind of ram into them on purpose, throw things at them. They're just not a good road user. They're really frustrating to drive around. And people in the cars get worried sometimes, like they get stuck at like places. Then you see, if you have driven a Tesla on autopilot, you kind of go, how the hell is this the future of driving? Like you can't even stay in the lane properly half the time.
Right.
Like it's definitely not reliable enough to use on a straight freeway in good conditions, let alone, let's say snow or a busy pedestrian area. It's just not good enough for that yet. So I think it'll happen eventually. It's just a matter of time.
So we have another question there from Richard.
Okay, how much time does it take me to create the sizzle every day? At the moment, takes me about 3 to 4 hours, and most of that is reading stuff. So I read a lot of the news. The actual writing of it's quite simple. I just retell what I just read, but sometimes I have to read multiple articles to understand what's happening with a certain topic. So that's where the time comes from.
Okay, I should have created a poll to see who's a Sizzle subscriber in here. Raise your hand if you're a Sizzle subscriber. Oh yeah, quite a few. I think you mentioned that you put it out today and mentioned it. So
I did, yeah. I put it at the top of today's newsletter so people could catch this.
Yeah, there you go. Who else has got any other questions? So while we're waiting for people to think about that, I just put a link there to the page for this talk on the lastconference.com/anywhere website, and we're recording this, so we will put it up there later on via YouTube. And if you do get something out of this talk and you feel like you can click the support button, which is totally voluntary, we'd appreciate it. Because we're trying to do something because we can't do conferences anymore. We're trying to do some things online. So please consider that, but it's completely up to you as to whether you do or not. Jed has a question.
Yes, Jed wants to know who do I see as the main competition for the Sizzle? And it's tough. I mean, I think people not having enough time, people's lives are the competition. Even though it's only like 10, 20 minutes a day to read, that's still a lot of time for some people. And even just the bringing awareness that exists is the hardest thing. the competition for actual content, I don't think there is a competitor that does what I do. There's no Australian media outlets that give you a summary of the day's Australian tech news in that kind of fashion. That's not a machine-generated one or just a bunch of links. There's this email called the Squiz, which is like also a podcast. They do just general news, not technology news. And I think if one of those publications was to have a tech news section in there that was good, that might be competition. But I don't think they would. I would think that they're not as good as what I could do, because they haven't got that tech knowledge.
Yep. We've got another one just come in.
Yes, from Brendan. Hello, Brendan. It felt like for the last few years, Apple had really lost its way. It seems they are listening to us users now and slowly fixing things and releasing competitive products again. What do you think of how Apple is doing? Apple are making more money than they ever have, so obviously they're doing fine. Like, they're still a $1 trillion company. Nothing seems to be, they can't do anything wrong, essentially. Nothing, all the mistakes that they've made in terms of software being like the latest release of macOS is a dumpster fire. I still haven't updated to it on my personal machines. Any kind of changes they make to the iPhone, like removing their headphone port, for example, doesn't seem to matter. People are still buying them. Whoever, that's the ultimate metric for a company like Apple. If people stop buying, then they need to change course. But it seems not to be a problem for them. They're doing very well. Yeah, so there's no issues. I think with their product line, they know what customers want more than me, and more than us kind of nerds as well. So yeah, they're doing pretty well.
I saw their Mac Pro wheels that just come out.
Well, yeah, and like they released that and people buy it, I guess. So yeah.
I could probably maybe afford the wheels and not the Mac Pro, I think. Joel's got a question.
Yes. Joel wants to know, how's Project 1000 going, and are there any more plans like the Sizzle Pi in the works? So the people who don't know, the Sizzle Pi was a little kind of like a little Raspberry Pi clone that I found on AliExpress. So it's a little one board computer that runs a thing called Pi-hole. So I installed the Pi-hole on these things, and Pi-hole is a network-wide ad blocker, which is a bit of a pain to set up. So I sold the little computer with Pi-hole pre-configured, and the aim was to plug it into your home router, and it would block all the ads for you. And it mostly worked. A lot of people liked it, but unfortunately, I also had a lot of them catch fire, which was not good. I had about a dozen melt. So they were an unreliable kind of. They were very cheap, to be honest. They were like $15 each, but they were just an unreliable unit. So I don't know if I'd be keen to do that again. It was also quite a hassle because I've worked in IT before, but I wasn't very good at it. I'm better at running about computers than I am actually using them, and it was a big pain to get the software going right. And I would love to find something again to do like that, but I can't think of anything that I'm technically capable of that people would also pay for and that won't damage their homes. So I'm not sure. And in relation to Project 1000, that was a plan for me to have 1,000 subscribers to the Sizzle, and because that's kind of the point where I'd be making more money from that than I would from all my other work together, so I could concentrate on just the Sizzle permanently. It hit a bit of a wall because when I moved to a new publishing platform called Substack, it really changed how I acquired new customers. The free trial aspect of it kind of didn't work the way it would to entice people to actually pay. The free trials were simply you got a weekly newsletter, which was like a taste, whereas what really worked before, which is how I got to where I was I actually give people a 2-week trial of the full newsletter, and that convinced people a lot more to sign up. Whereas with Substack, I couldn't do that. Everything else is great. It's a lot easier to maintain the list and to maintain a customer database and the transactions for money and stuff compared to my homemade little hodgepodge scripts and things that I did to link all these different services together. But it's definitely hit a wall. Like it grows very, very minimally. So I need to transition away from Substack back to my hopefully improved homemade system to give people a proper taste of what the sizzle is. And once people see it, I had a good success in getting people to pay because they liked it. I used to have a 30% conversion rate from the free trial to paid, which is actually quite good. But now it's like 1%, 2%, which is a big difference.
Okay. So it seems like the questions are sort of slowing down there. So probably wrap it up and just say thanks very much, Anthony, for telling us your various tales. I really like the way that you just try shit and see what happens and have interesting times and adventures along the way. And so thanks very much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And everyone out there, please keep checking our website because we'll have talks about all different types of things coming up. There's not so much coming up right now, but we're working on a few things, and I'm just thinking of all different ideas of interesting stuff that I can have up on the program as well. So we're going to keep doing this and keep people interested and help people to learn a few things maybe in an informal kind of manner as we go along. So that's it. Thanks very much for today, and thanks everyone for coming.
Bye.
Bye.